The Galactic Concord had been at peace for 12,000 years. Nobody could remember the last war. Nobody could remember what war even looked like. The alien species that made up the Concord had never needed to fight. Their worlds were gentle places with soft weather and plenty of food. They had evolved without predators, without enemies, without any reason to hurt each other. Ambassador Desic 9 belonged to a species called the Valori. His body was made of living crystal that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls when he moved. He had served the Concord for 300 years, and in all that time, nothing truly bad had ever happened. There were small problems, of course. Trade disputes, territorial disagreements. But these things were solved with words and patience. Then the Varax came. The first reports arrived like whispers. A colony world had gone silent. Then another. Then 5 more. Ships sent to investigate never returned. When the Concord finally got images of what was happening, Desic 9 felt something he had never felt before. He did not have a word for it in his language. Later, a human would tell him it was called terror. The Varax were a swarm. They moved through space in ships that looked like living things, all sharp angles and dark shells. They landed on worlds and consumed everything: plants, animals, people. They ate until nothing remained but bare rock and ash. Then they moved to the next world and did it again. The Concord had no answer for this. Desic 9 stood in the Chamber of Stars, the great hall where all important decisions were made. Around him floated holographic images of burning cities and fleeing refugees. The sounds of screaming filled the air. On the world called Meridian 7, 12 million people were dying. High Counselor Mechdeth was an insectoid creature with compound eyes that reflected the horror on the screens. She clicked her mandibles together, a sign of deep distress among her kind. "We have no military," she said. "We have no weapons. We have nothing that can stop them." "We could negotiate," someone suggested. "They do not speak. They do not respond to any communication. They only consume." The chamber fell into silence. Desic 9 watched the images of Meridian V and felt helpless in a way he had never experienced. His species had spent millions of years becoming civilized. They had left violence behind so long ago that it seemed like a bad dream. Now that violence had come to them, and they had forgotten how to answer it. "There is one option," he said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. He could feel their fear, their hope, their desperate need for any solution. "Earth," he said. "The humans." The silence that followed was different. It was the silence of people confronting something they had tried very hard to forget. Earth had been discovered 60 years ago. The Concord's exploration ships had found it on the outer edge of the galaxy, a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. At first, the explorers had been excited. A new species to welcome into the Concord. New friends to make dot. Then they learned what Earth was really like. The planet was classified as a Class 12 hazard zone, the highest level of danger. The temperatures swung wildly from burning hot to freezing cold. The ground shook and split open without warning. Mountains exploded and covered entire regions in fire and ash. The water was filled with creatures that could tear a person apart in seconds. The land was crawling with predators that had spent millions of years learning how to kill. Even the smallest life forms, things too tiny to see, could invade a body and destroy it from within. The first contact team had lasted 11 minutes on Earth's surface before calling for emergency rescue, and yet humans lived there. They did not just survive. They thrived. They had spread across every part of their deadly world. They lived in the frozen places and the burning places. They swam in waters full of monsters. They built cities in areas that shook and crumbled. Nothing stopped them. Nothing even slowed them down. The Concord had decided that humans were too dangerous to bring into galactic society. Their entire evolution had been shaped by violence and death. They carried that violence inside them like a disease. So Earth had been quarantined. No contact, no trade, no communication. The humans were left alone on their deadly world, watched from a safe distance. For 60 years, the Concord had pretended Earth did not exist. Now, Designine was suggesting they ask these dangerous creatures for help. They are violent beyond understanding, High Counselor Mective said. Their entire history is written in blood. They have spent their existence fighting each other, killing each other, destroying each other. If we invite them into our space, we may be trading one threat for another. The Varax will reach Earth eventually, Designine replied. The humans will have to face them whether we ask for help or not. But if we ask now, while we still have something to offer in return, perhaps we can form an alliance. Perhaps they will remember that we came to them in our hour of need. And if they refuse, then we are no worse off than we are now. Another counselor spoke up. Do they even have ships? Do they have weapons capable of fighting the Varax? Designine pulled up the observation records from Earth. The images showed human orbital stations, shipyards, fleets of vessels bristling with weapons. The humans had never stopped preparing for war. Even when there was no enemy to fight, they had kept building, kept training, kept ready. They've been waiting for something like this, Designine said. Their entire species is designed for conflict. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them every single day, and they conquered it. They are what we need. High Counselor Mective looked at the images of Meridian 7 one last time. The death toll had passed 13 million. The Varax ships were already leaving, moving toward their next target. In 3 weeks, another world would burn. Send the signal, she said, and may the stars forgive us for what we are about to unleash. The message was transmitted that night. It traveled across the vast emptiness of space, aimed at a small blue planet that the Concord had tried so hard to forget. It was a simple message, just a few words that carried the weight of desperation. To the people of Earth, we need your help. Please. Designine watched the signal disappear into the darkness. He wondered what would answer. He wondered if they had just saved the galaxy or doomed it. He would not have to wait long to find out. Admiral Helena Vasquez was 53 years old and had spent 30 of those years preparing for a war that never came. She had trained soldiers who never saw battle. She had commanded ships that never fired their weapons at anything except targets. She had studied tactics for fighting enemies that existed only in theory. Now she stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance and read the alien message for the 4th time. They want our help, she said. Her voice was flat, controlled. After 60 years of treating us like dangerous animals, after quarantining our entire system, after calling us evolutionary mistakes and contamination risks, now they want our help. General Marcus Cole stood beside her. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from decades of combat training. The Varax have killed over 3 billion people in 8 months, he said. 17 colony worlds completely destroyed. The Concord has no military at all. Some automated asteroid defense systems. A few ceremonial guards with weapons they do not know how to use. That is everything they have. They never thought they would need more. No, they evolved on paradise worlds. Food everywhere. Perfect weather. No predators. They never had to fight for anything. The very concept of war is alien to them. Vasquez turned away from the message and looked out the main viewport. Earth hung in the darkness below, blue and green and white, beautiful and deadly. She had been born in the mountains of South America, in a region where earthquakes happened every month, and the jungle was full of things that could kill you in 100 different ways. She had grown up learning to survive. Every human did. What does the council say? She asked. They are voting now, but the outcome is already certain. We cannot ignore this. Because of the Varax? Because the Varax will reach us eventually. They are consuming their way across the galaxy. Earth is just another meal to them. We can fight them on our terms, in their space, or we can wait for them to come here and fight them in ours. Vasquez nodded slowly. She understood. This was not about saving the Concorde. This was about survival. It had always been about survival. That was the one thing humans understood better than any other species in the galaxy. The Council's decision came 3 hours later. Unanimous approval. The United Earth government would send a military response to the Concorde's request for aid. The first expeditionary fleet would launch within 72 hours. Vasquez was given command. The next 3 days were a blur of activity. Ships were fueled and armed. Soldiers were briefed and equipped. Supply lines were established. Medical facilities were prepared for casualties that everyone hoped would never come, but everyone knew would. 200,000 soldiers volunteered for the mission. Vasquez could have taken 10 times that number. Humans had been waiting for this moment for 60 years. A chance to prove themselves. A chance to show the galaxy what they were capable of. A chance to matter. On the morning of departure, Vasquez walked through the main hangar of the Vengeance. Rows of soldiers stood at attention, their faces serious and determined. They wore powered armor that could stop most weapons and enhance their strength tenfold. They carried rifles that could punch through starship hulls. They were the most dangerous fighting force the galaxy had ever seen, and they were scared. Vasquez could see it in their eyes. Not fear of death. Humans had made peace with death long ago. They were scared of failing. Scared of not being good enough. Scared that after all their preparation, they would arrive too late to make a difference. She stopped in front of a young sergeant named Chun. He was 24 years old and had never seen real combat. None of them had. You ready? She asked. Yes, Admiral. Ready to show them what humans can do. Vasquez almost smiled. Do you know why the Concorde is afraid of us? Because we are violent? Because we survive. We come from a world that tries to kill us every single day. Earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, predators, disease, radiation. Our planet throws everything it has at us, and we refuse to die. That is what makes us dangerous. Not our weapons, not our ships, our refusal to give up. She raised her voice so everyone could hear. The Varax are predators. They have spent millions of years as the biggest, strongest, deadliest things in their part of the universe. They have never met anything that could fight back. They are about to learn that Earth produces a different kind of predator. The kind that hunts the hunters. A cheer went up from the soldiers. It was a rough sound, full of adrenaline and anticipation. Vasquez returned to the bridge as the fleet prepared for departure. 47 warships hung in formation around the Lemairs. Vengeance, destroyers, cruisers, carriers, battleships, each. One was designed for a single purpose, to destroy anything that threatened humanity. All ships report ready, her communications officer said. Open. A channel to the Concorde. The connection crackled to life. Somewhere across the galaxy, alien beings were waiting to hear if help was coming. This is Admiral Helena Vasquez of the United Earth Navy, she said. Your message was received. Help is on the way. We are sending 47 warships and 200,000 soldiers. We will arrive at Meridian 7 in approximately 6 days. Until then, I have one order for you. She paused, letting the silence stretch. Stay alive. Whatever it takes. Stay alive until we get there. She cut the connection and turned to her helmsman. Take us out. The fleet moved as one. Engines fired, pushing the massive ships away from Earth's orbit. Navigation systems locked onto their destination. Hyperspace drives began charging, building up the energy needed to punch a hole in reality itself. Vasquez watched Earth grow smaller in the viewport. She wondered how many of her people would see it again. She wondered how many would die on worlds they had never heard of, fighting enemies they had never met, defending species that had treated them like monsters. It did not matter. This was what humans did. They fought. They died. They survived. They had been doing it since the first human picked up a rock and decided that the world would not kill them today. The hyperspace drives fired. Reality twisted and tore. The first expeditionary fleet vanished from Earth's solar system in a flash of light, racing toward a war that would change the galaxy forever. In the Chamber of Stars, Ambassador Designine watched the human fleet disappear from his sensors. He did not know if he should feel relieved or terrified, perhaps both. The Varax had never known fear. For millions of years, they had been the ultimate predators. They moved through space in massive swarms, consuming everything they found. Planets, moons, entire civilizations. Nothing could stop them. Nothing could even slow them down. They were hunger given form, a species that existed only to eat and grow and spread. The Hive Admiral commanded the swarm above Meridian 7. It was an ancient creature, its body twisted and hardened by centuries of consumption. Through its neural link, it controlled 3,000 ships and 2 million warriors. It had personally overseen the destruction of 47 worlds. It had never lost a battle because there had never been battles. Only feeding. When the human fleet emerged from hyperspace, the Hive Admiral felt something strange. A sensation it did not recognize. Its warriors were detecting the new arrivals, analyzing them, trying to understand what they were seeing. These ships were different from anything the Varax had encountered before. They were angular and harsh, covered in sharp edges and weapon ports. They moved in tight formations, each ship perfectly positioned to support the others. They looked like they had been designed by something that understood violence. The Hive Admiral sent the standard signal. It was a simple message that the Varax broadcast to all new species they encountered. Submit or be consumed. There was no other option. There had never needed to be another option. The response came immediately. A single word transmitted on all frequencies. No. The Hive Admiral did not understand. No species had ever refused. No species had ever been capable of refusing. Submission was the only logical choice when faced with overwhelming force. What could these newcomers possibly hope to achieve by resistance? The answer came in fire. The lead human ship, the one called Vengeance, opened fire first. Its main weapons were something the Varax had never seen before. Concentrated beams of energy that could slice through matter like water. Missiles that locked onto targets and chased them through evasive maneuvers. Railguns that accelerated metal slugs to speeds that made them hit harder than any explosive. 43 Varax ships died in the first 9 seconds. The Hive Admiral tried to process what was happening. Its warriors were screaming through the neural link, their signals mixing panic and confusion. They did not know how to react. They had no training for this. In all the history of the Varax, no prey had ever struck back with such speed and fury. Admiral Vasquez watched the first wave of destruction from her command chair. Her face showed no emotion. She had trained for this moment her entire life. Every human officer had. Second salvo, she ordered. Target their formation center. I want them fragmented. The fleet responded instantly. Weapons fire poured into the Varax swarm, tearing through ships like paper. The alien vessels were not designed for combat. They had no armor because they had never needed armor. They had no point defense systems because nothing had ever shot at them before. They were predators who had never imagined becoming prey. On the surface of Meridian 7, the Concorde refugees heard the explosions in the sky. They looked up and saw something impossible. The Varax ships were burning. They were falling. They were dying. And through the flames came new shapes. Human dropships, angular and armored, screaming down through the atmosphere like metal predators. They hit the ground hard, their doors already opening before they stopped moving. Marine Sergeant Rodriguez was the first human to set foot on Meridian 7. She was 28 years old and had grown up in the flood zones of Bangladesh, where she had learned to survive in water that rose without warning and carried away everything that was not tied down. She was small for a Marine, but her powered armor made size irrelevant. The Varax warriors turned to face her. They were horrifying creatures, all teeth and claws and armored shells. Each one stood 3 meters tall. They had conquered dozens of species. They had killed billions of beings. They had never known defeat. Rodriguez raised her rifle and pulled the trigger. The first Varax exploded. The second. The third. Rodriguez moved forward, firing continuously, her armor absorbing the scratches and bites of warriors who got too close. Behind her, more Marines poured out of the dropships. They spread across the battlefield in practice formations, covering each other, supporting each other, killing everything that moved. Ambassador Designine was evacuating with the last group of refugees when he saw it happen. A single human soldier, separated from her unit, surrounded by a dozen Varax warriors. The alien creatures circled her, preparing to strike from all directions at once. The soldier did not run. She did not call for help. She dropped her rifle, drew a blade from her belt, and charged. Designine had never seen anything like it. The soldier moved through the Varax like a force of nature. She ducked under claws, rolled through legs, drove her blade into joints and weak points that the aliens did not even know they had. Within 30 seconds, she was standing alone among 12 Varax corpses, her armor dented but intact, her breathing heavy but controlled. She noticed Designine watching her. For a moment they stared at each other. The ambassador who had spent 3 centuries talking about peace. The soldier who had spent her whole life preparing for war. "What are you?" Designine whispered. The soldier wiped alien blood from her visor. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Only the cold satisfaction of a predator who had found worthy prey. "We are the monsters your galaxy was too civilized to create," she said. "Now get to your ship. We will handle this." Above them, the sky continued to burn. The Varax swarm was breaking apart, ships fleeing in all directions as the human fleet hunted them down. For the first time in their existence, the great predators of the galaxy were learning what it felt like to be prey. The Hive Admiral watched its warriors die and felt that strange sensation growing stronger. It searched its genetic memory for a name: fear. The sensation was called fear. The Varax had finally found something to be afraid of. The war changed after Meridian-VII. Word spread through the Varax swarm like a disease. The neural links that connected all Varax carried the memories of those who had faced the humans. The fear, the confusion, the absolute certainty of death. Every Varax in the galaxy felt those memories and understood that something had changed. There was a new predator in the universe, and it was hunting them. Admiral Vasquez did not give the Varax time to adapt. She understood something that the Concorde species had never needed to learn. In war, mercy was a weapon that your enemy would use against you. The Varax had shown no mercy to the billions they had consumed. They would receive none in return. The human fleet pushed deeper into Varax territory. World after world was liberated. Colony after colony was saved. The soldiers who had trained their entire lives without seeing real combat became veterans in weeks. They learned to fight in conditions that would have killed any Concord species within hours. General Marcus Cole led the ground campaign personally. He had spent his career preparing for exactly this kind of war. Close combat, urban warfare, hunting enemies through terrain that wanted to kill you almost as much as the enemy did. On the Varax staging world of Kethros Prime, his unit was ambushed. The Varax had learned from their defeats. They had started setting traps, using the environment to separate human units from their support. Cole and 300 Marines found themselves surrounded in a ruined city, cut off from orbital support, with 5,000 Varax warriors closing in. A Concord commander would have surrendered. A Concord soldier would have accepted death as inevitable. Cole ordered his Marines to dig in. For 72 hours, they fought without rest. The Varax attacked in waves, throwing themselves against the human positions with mindless fury. The Marines mowed them down, shifted positions, and mowed them down again. When ammunition ran low, they picked up Varax weapons and kept fighting. When food ran out, they ate the supplies they found in the alien ruins. When soldiers fell wounded, their companions patched them up and put them back on the line. No one surrendered. No one broke. No one even suggested retreat. Concord observers watched the battle from orbit, unable to look away. Ambassador Desic-9 had insisted on joining the fleet to witness the war firsthand. He had wanted to understand humans. Now he was beginning to realize that understanding them might be impossible. "They have been fighting for 3 days," he said to the human officers standing beside him. "They have not slept. They have not eaten properly. Many of them are wounded. How are they still standing?" Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park was a medic attached to the observation team. She watched the battle footage with clinical detachment. Adrenaline, training, willpower. Humans can push their bodies far beyond normal limits when survival is at stake. We evolved that ability over millions of years. But why? Why not retreat? Why not find a defensible position and wait for rescue? Because retreating means dying tired. General Cole knows that if his unit runs, the Varax will hunt them down in the open. At least in the city, they have cover. They have choke points. They have a chance. Park paused. And because giving up is not in our nature. Never has been. Never will be. On the ground, Cole crouched behind a shattered wall and reloaded his rifle for the 100th time. His armor was dented and scarred. One of his arms was broken, set roughly with a field splint. He had not slept in 2 days, but his hands were steady and his eyes were clear. Sergeant Chung crawled up beside him. The young soldier looked like he had aged 10 years in the past week. "General, we are down to our last power cells. Maybe an hour of sustained fire. Then, we make every shot count. Sir, permission to speak freely? Go ahead. Why are we doing this? Why are we dying on a world we never heard of for species that called us monsters?" Cole considered the question. Through the gaps in the wall, he could see Varax warriors massing for another assault. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. They never seemed to run out. "Because someone has to," he said finally. "Because if we do not stop the Varax here, they will keep spreading. They will consume world after world until there is nothing left. And eventually, they will reach Earth. They will reach our families, our homes, everything we care about." He turned to look at Chun directly. "We are not fighting for the Concord. We are not fighting because they asked nicely. We are fighting because that is what humans do. We see a threat and we destroy it. We see something that wants to hurt people and we stop it. That is who we are. That is who we have always been." The Varax attacked again. Cole rose from cover and opened fire, his broken arm screaming in pain as he controlled the rifle with pure muscle memory. Beside him, Chung did the same. All around them, Marines who should have been dead on their feet kept fighting with the stubborn determination that had carried humanity through ice ages and plagues and world wars. 6 hours later, reinforcements finally arrived. The rescue force found General Cole sitting on a pile of Vorax corpses, calmly cleaning his rifle. His armor was so damaged it barely functioned. He had lost 43 soldiers and killed over 2,000 enemy warriors. "What kept you?" he asked the rescue commander. After the battle, Ambassador Designine requested a meeting with Cole. The general agreed, though he had not slept in 4 days and could barely stand. "I need to understand," Designine said. "How do you do it? How do you keep fighting when everything tells you to stop?" Cole was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was tired but certain. "Earth is not a kind world. It has never been kind. Every species on our planet evolved to kill or be killed. We grew up fighting for every meal, every territory, every chance to reproduce. We learned very early that the universe does not care if you live or die. It will not save you. It will not protect you. The only thing standing between you and extinction is your own will to survive." He looked at the ambassador with eyes that had seen too much death. "Your species never learned that lesson. You evolved on worlds that were gentle and safe. You never had to fight because there was nothing to fight against. And because of that, you forgot that the universe is dangerous. You forgot that there are things out there that want to hurt you. And humans never forgot. Humans cannot forget. It is written in our blood. Every time we look at the stars, we see threats. Every time we meet a new species, we ask ourselves if it can hurt us. We are paranoid and violent and aggressive because those traits kept us alive when gentler creatures died." Cole stood up slowly, his body aching in 100 places. "You called us monsters. You were right. We are exactly the monsters our planet created. And right now, you need monsters more than you need anything else." Designine watched him limp away and finally understood. Humans were not evil. They were not cruel for the sake of cruelty. They were simply the product of a world that had never stopped trying to kill them, and in a galaxy that suddenly contained the Vorax, that made them the most valuable species alive. 3 years after the first shot was fired, the war came to an end above the Vorax homeworld. It was not truly a homeworld. The Vorax had consumed their original planet millions of years ago, stripping it down to bare rock before moving on. What they called home now was the largest hive ship in existence, a vessel the size of a small moon that served as the brain of their entire species. Every Vorax in the galaxy was connected to it through neural links. Every swarm took its orders from the ancient queens that lived in its depths. Destroy the hive ship, and the Vorax would become mindless animals. Still dangerous. Still hungry, but no longer capable of the coordinated attacks that had consumed entire civilizations. Admiral Alana Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Vengeance and studied the enemy formation. The Vorax had gathered everything they had left. Thousands of ships formed a living shield around their hive ship. They were not running anymore. They were not hiding. This was their final stand. Behind Vasquez, the combined might of humanity's navy waited in silence. 3 years of war had changed them. The eager volunteers who had shipped out from Earth were gone, replaced by hardened veterans who had seen things no other species could imagine. They had fought on burning worlds and frozen moons. They had hunted Vorax through asteroid fields and gas giant atmospheres. They had bled on 100 battlefields for people who had once called them monsters. 40,000 humans had died in this war. 40,000 soldiers who would never see Earth again. Vasquez intended to make sure they had not died for nothing. "All ships report ready," her communications officer said. Vasquez opened a channel to the fleet. Her voice was calm and steady. the voice of someone who had long ago accepted that she might not survive what came next. This is Admiral Vasquez to all ships. Somewhere in that swarm is the heart of a species that has killed billions. They did not do it out of hatred. They did not do it out of ideology or revenge. They did it because they were hungry, because they saw the entire galaxy as nothing but food waiting to be consumed. She paused, letting her words sink in. 3 years ago, we answered a call for help from species that feared us. We could have ignored them. We could have stayed on Earth and waited for the Varax to come to us. Instead, we chose to fight. We chose to bleed for strangers. We chose to be the shield between civilization and extinction. Through the viewport, she could see the Varax fleet beginning to move. They were coming. Today, we finish what we started. Today, we prove that the deadliest thing in this galaxy is not something that eats planets. It is something that refuses to give up. She straightened in her chair. All ships, engage. The battle began with fire. Human weapons tore into the Varax formation, burning through ships that scrambled desperately to close the distance. The Varax had learned over 3 years of war. They had developed new tactics, new weapons, new ways of fighting. But they were still predators trying to become warriors. Humans have been warriors for all of recorded history. And long before that dot, the fighting lasted 18 hours. Vasquez directed the battle from the Vengeance, her mind processing thousands of data points every second. She watched human ships die and forced herself to keep giving orders. She watched Varax swarms break and reform and break again. She watched the hive ship slowly becoming vulnerable as its defensive fleet was stripped away. The final assault was led by General Cole. He had survived Kethrus Prime. He had survived a dozen other battles that should have killed him. Now he led the assault force that would end the war. His shuttle screamed toward the hive ship through a storm of weapons fire. Around him, other shuttles exploded, their crews dying in an instant. Cole did not look. He did not mourn. There would be time for mourning later. If they survived, the shuttle crashed through the hive ship's outer hull and skidded to a stop in a vast chamber filled with organic growths. Cole was moving before the doors finished opening, his soldiers pouring out behind him. The interior of the hive ship was a nightmare. Living walls pulsed with alien life. Corridors twisted and changed like the veins of some massive creature. Varax warriors appeared from every direction, driven mad by the presence of humans in their most sacred place. Cole and his soldiers killed them all. They pushed deeper into the hive ship, fighting through chambers filled with eggs and nurseries filled with young Varax. Cole felt nothing. These creatures would have grown up to consume worlds. They would have killed billions more if given the chance. He was not committing murder. He was performing surgery, cutting out a cancer that threatened the entire galaxy. The neural core was buried at the center of the hive ship. It was a massive biological computer, a brain the size of a building that controlled every Varax everywhere. Queen forms surrounded it, ancient creatures that had lived for millions of years, directing the swarm's endless hunger. Cole raised his weapon. The queen screamed at him through the neural link, trying to overwhelm his mind with fear and despair. He pulled the trigger anyway. The neural core died. The queens died. And across the galaxy, the Varax swarm fell silent. Ships that had been fighting suddenly drifted aimlessly. Warriors that had been hunting suddenly stopped, confused, unable to hear the voices that had always guided them. The Varax were not extinct. They were still dangerous, still hungry. But they were no longer coordinated, no longer unstoppable. The war was over. Admiral Vasquez transmitted her report to Earth and to the Galactic Concord. Her voice was hoarse from hours of giving orders, but there was a note of something that might have been pride. The Varax threat has been neutralized. The hive ship is destroyed. We have won. She leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. 12,000 human soldiers had died in the final battle. Thousands more had been wounded. The cost of victory was written in blood, but they had won. 2 months later, Admiral Vasquez stood in the Chamber of Stars. The representatives of 47 species surrounded her, their alien faces showing emotions she could not quite read. Ambassador Designine stood beside her, his crystalline body catching the light. The Galactic Concord has voted unanimously to lift Earth's quarantine, High Counselor Mechdith announced. Humanity will be offered full membership in the Concord, with all the rights and responsibilities that implies. Vasquez nodded slowly. 3 years ago, this moment would have felt like a triumph. Now it just felt tired. "Thank you," she said. "But I want you to understand something. We did not do this for membership. We did not do this for trade rights or territory or any of the things you could offer us." "Then why?" Designine asked. Vasquez considered the question. Around her, dozens of alien species waited for her answer. Species that had spent 12,000 years avoiding violence. Species that had evolved on worlds where nothing wanted to hurt them. Species that had looked at humans and seen only monsters. "Because you asked," she said finally. "Because you needed help and we were able to give it. Because that is what civilized species do for each other, even when they are afraid." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings who would never truly understand what it meant to come from a world like Earth. "We are not monsters. We never were. We are simply the product of a universe that does not care about peace or safety or survival. We learned to fight because our planet gave us no other choice. And we kept fighting because we chose to use that ability to protect others instead of destroy them." She paused. "That is what separates us from the Vorax. They consumed because they were hungry. We fight because we care about something beyond ourselves." The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Ambassador Designine began to applaud. One by one, the other representatives joined him. The sound echoed through the Chamber of Stars. An acknowledgement of something that words could not express. Humanity had come to the galaxy as monsters. They were leaving as heroes, and the galaxy would never be the same.